Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, my name is Luqman bin Abdul Hakim, and in this video, my group and I will be talking about Asian financial crisis 1997. But in this video, we will be discussing on one specific country, which is South Korea. Okay, so this is gonna be our outline. We'll be discussing about the background, the reason, the effect, and also the solution of the crisis. Okay, our group members, or my team consists of me, myself, Luqman bin Abdul Hakim, and Harun Ishaq Kasim, Omar Muhammad Abdirrahman, and also Muhammad Firdaus bin Zulkifli. So I will be discussing a bit about the background of this crisis. So, Asian financial crisis can be categorized as one of the major global financial crises that destabilized the Asian economy as well as the world economy at the end of the 1990s, or inaccurate in 1997. But what are the causes of this crisis to happen? So the reason behind this crisis, one of the reasons is due to the collapse of the currency exchange rate and the hot money bubble. And it's all first started in Thailand in July 1997, and it all swept over the East and also the Southeast Asia. Okay, let me bring back the time before 1997 or before 1990s. The Korean at the time, the economy of the Korean country can be categorized as one of the leading country in the economic. Why? Because during that time, the currency of Korean is higher, and the oil price is lower, the interest rate is also lower, business expansion, and even the GDP per capita is $10,000 US. Imagine. But have you guys ever wondered how can a country that considered as a leading country in the economic can fall to this crisis? It's all started because of the Hamburg steel scandal, which is a large chaebol that collapsed with a 6 billion of debts, and this is the first ever bankruptcy of the leading Korean conglomerates. But what are the real or the other reason that leads to this crisis? My friend will explain more about this.
So now we will look at the reasons behind the crisis. So one of the reasons behind the crisis is deteriorating condition over time. So the economics of South Korea was going bad time after time. So in 1990, the Korean current account balance started to deteriorate because of rising inflation, appreciation of Korean won, and the recession of world economy. So in 1991, the South Korean current account got a deficit of $8.7 billion, which was more than 4 times than the level of preceding year. The other reason is increasing short-term foreign currency debt of financial institutions. In 1993, the government of Korea announced a blueprint for financial sector liberalization that deregulated restrictions on asset and liability management of financial institutions. But the government neglected the need of adequate prudential regulation in this move. So this led to an increase in the short-term foreign currency debt of financial institutions. So the other reason behind the crisis is the government itself failed to observe on financial sectors, and the accounting and disclosure standards expected of financial institutions were below the international best practice, and the market value of accounting was not widely practiced. So due to the weak of financial supervision and the high business family depending on bank financing, and all the risks was concentrated on the banks. So this was one of the reasons behind the crisis.
So here are the effects of the crisis. First, corporate collapse due to the excessive interest rate. A consequence of the government's attempt to maintain the overvalued exchange rate was that Korean interest rate became cripplingly high. In early December 1997, before to the flooding of the won, the benchmark 3-year corporate bond yield reached 26%, the highest in 15 years, while domestic interest rates were extremely high. The overvalued won caused the effective yield to foreigners to be much lower. In addition, the exchange rate risk of a devaluation of the won required even higher domestic interest rate to pursue foreigners to supply foreign currency. The higher interest rate resulting from the government's exchange rate policy imposed internal burden on a corporate foreign, causing straining of a corporate collapse. Second, the IMF bailout had adverse effect on South Korean citizens and their economy. With the IMF loan being used to repay the foreign lenders, the Korean government let overseas lenders off the hook and shifted the burden of a poor investment and loan repayment to its taxpayers. In addition, the IMF insists on limiting economic growth and cutting government spending without permitting tax to be cut is a recipe for recessions and rising unemployment. So last but not least, the government's mismanagement of the won exchange rate was a major cause of Koreans' bad loans. Debt crisis due to the government's mismanagement of the exchange rate since the South Korean government fixed the won to the US dollar. When the US dollar appreciated in 1997, it resulted in the won also appreciating since the US dollar is a flexible interest rate. Its appreciation was due to the millions of individuals, investors judging its value to have improved. The devaluation caused the majority of foreign currency denominated loans to become ineconomic and borrowing firms to become insolvent. Thank you.
Next, I will continue the presentation with the solution of South Korea government to overcome the crisis. The first solution is to seek official assistance from International Monetary Fund (IMF). This can be considered as the main solution undertaken by South Korea government. The total amount of money that IMF together with other financial institutions offered to bail out South Korea was $58.4 billion, and out of this value, $23.4 billion was reserved as a second line defense if the initial amount is not enough. The purpose of getting this fund were to meet the nation's short-term obligation, to make structural reforms, and also to further tightening their country monetary and fiscal policy. And after the agreement with IMF, they need to formulate several reforms, and this lead to the second solution, which is financial sector reform. The purpose of this reform is to reduce the likelihood of a similar crisis to be occurred in the future, and also to evolve a financial system that can best help the nation to resume back the growth of the country. Among the prominent reforms undertaken by government are strengthening legal and authorities infrastructure. To achieve a comprehensive financial reform, laying out a statutory and regulatory frameworks are needed. Hence, the Bank of Korea enacted 13 financial bills, including a bill to establish a consolidated financial supervisory authority. After the bill enacted, Financial Supervisory Commission (FSC) was established, and it is totally independent from the government. To strengthen the authority of FSC, Financial Industry Restructuring Act was amended to give FSC effective authority in order to write off, suspension, and closure of ailing financial institutions. The next reformation is promoting capital account liberalization. Government of South Korea have taken many measures to promote this liberalization, such as to change their foreign exchange system to a free floating foreign exchange rate system, and also restriction on mergers and acquisition by foreigner were also abolished. Full liberalization of foreign investment in Korean bonds. And after this reformation, the country can see that the trading volume in Korea foreign exchange market has grown significantly and rapidly since the crisis. That's all from me. Thank you.